Welcome to One More Thing. I'm Brett Watson. This is Pastor Troy Doucet. And
Morning.
We're going to talk about Sunday's sermon.
Yep.
So I told you in the meeting that it's definitely in my top 3 that you've done, man. And, there are different reasons that people, it's a subjective thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
People feel like that was a great sermon. Somebody else might think, yeah, that was all right,
Yeah.
But for me, because I appreciate theology and philosophy, I personally get a lot out of some of the things that you take on, and I just thought the points were just so dead on in this particular sermon. But the thing that stuck out to me the most, that I really love, it's almost like this should be on the back of every car, you said, I want to have a biblical identity. Okay. And then you kind of played off of that and showed the fallacy of thinking that way. Right. Pointing out that there are many things that are biblical, but are not something that you would expect from a Christ follower, not Christ-like. So, owning slaves is biblical. Setting slaves free is biblical. Only one of these is Christ-like.
Yeah.
Those are just boss. I love them.
I saw you cheering from the front row, man.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Motivated me to preach a little harder.
So I kind of wanted to talk about that for this session a little more. What made you think about that? What brought that to mind?
Oh.
Like, was it a personal incident? Somebody you ran into at the gym, or
no? I think so. The way I prepare my sermons is I look at the text first. So the text sort of dictates, I guess, the framing of where I'm going to trust the Spirit to lead. In that, and I know the 3 events that I talk about led to Jesus's triumphant entry, and then ultimately his persecution. And so I think on that point, number 2 was something about the notion that when I start living out my true identity, which is I'm going to live into this truth that I'm a child of God, then it's going to trigger those who can't figure theirs out.
Yes.
And what I meant by that is, without saying, because again, I want people to have, again, their own sort of subjective encounter with the points that are made and things that are preached. Because I say, if God takes your mind somewhere, go there with it. Think your own thoughts. Let my thoughts be like ignitions for whatever. And so out of that, a lot of people's identity is they feel like they have to work for something. They feel like they have to work hard at maintaining this identity of being a Christian. And this entails doing this, this, and this. And if I'm not doing that, then I fail to meet that identity. When in fact, you did nothing to become a child of God. You just are. And when you live into that identity, there's a freedom that comes with that. And for me, the freedom has never been to be licentious in any way, right? To be immoral. I may say crude jokes every now and then. I may use language that's inappropriate, but it's never it's never at the cost of hurting other people. And the problem with a biblical identity is trying to maintain this. It's highly subjective. Like, from what biblical perspective are you going to identify with? Because it's just too easy to say, like, the Bible is true and it's the Word of God. The way I say it is, the Bible is true, and some of that stuff actually happened. That's the way we approach it. So when I hear this notion of people trying to ground or situate their identity in like a biblical one, then that's why I brought up these points. Well, this is biblical, and so is this, and they're contradictory, but only one of those reflects a Christ likeness. Yeah. And so there were many people who posted that on Facebook that the same day.
Really?
Oh, yeah. There was some people who posted about it, and great, And so that was the whole point, is be careful of what identity you're trying to take on. I think that's how I said it in the notes, is beware of knowing one and not the other.
Yeah. Beware of identifying with one, but not the other.
That's right.
Amen. and that's what I think that was such a poignant point made with that whole that whole section of the sermon. Poignant, because of the very divided kind of culture that we live in, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that division, and it may be that a lot of people don't realize this, but a lot of that division is religious division.
Oh, yeah.
Even what they would think of as political division has its roots in religiosity, right?
Yeah,
A particular strand of Christian worldview that has evolved over the years into Christian nationalism.
That's right.
And so much of that is so antithetical to the example that we see in the Gospels of Jesus.
That's it. I mean, you look at Jesus as just his 12 followers in the inner circle he had. The Bible gives us pretty clear indication of who was there. And you have a tax collector, Matthew, who, again, Matthew, a tax collector, who's a Jew, collecting taxes from his own people to pay homage to the enemy. Like, imagine that person.
Yeah, it's almost the worst thing you can be.
And then you have a zealot, right? You have Simon the Zealot. Zealots were known for assassinating.
They were the terrorists of their day.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Like Matthew's in perpetual danger. Yeah. But yet they don't bring this up because Jesus has this sort of magnetism and charisma to go, that's not really your identity. Yeah. That's not really how you should identify. And this is why I love Suncoast, man. This is why this is a special place. Because, look, dude, I have people come up to me at the end of my sermons and go, fantastic, great job. You got me thinking, whatever. And I have no idea where they align politically.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't know where they are with their sexual orientation. Because I know there are people in our church who are far right on the political spectrum and far left. Yes. But yet they gather and sort of shun those identities for a brief moment to go, there's something bigger than this. Like we have people, Larry and we've officiated same-sex weddings and officiated heterosexual weddings. And it's quite obvious when you look out in the crowd, we have same-sex couples who are together and heterosexual couples together. And it's like they've agreed to say, yeah, that's not the totality of my identity. Yeah. There's something greater within me than manifest in my particular preferences, politically, sexually, whatever. And dude, that's why I love this place, is because it gives us space to look at this text, the Bible, with an air of honesty that I can say, I'm going to say something, and that's why I call this series Triggered. And there were people who were quite triggered by some of the things I said. I'm not saying it to trigger you, but the point is we're all going to be triggered by something. Yeah. It's not always going to be some horrific, traumatic event. It's going to be, I believe that all my life, and you telling me that that's wrong? And I'm going, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying you can continue to believe that in light of the evidence that's at hand. But think of what type of freedom exists on the other side of embracing truth. And that's why I say it, man. That's why I call the sermon Triggered by Truth, is if I am tied to that lie, I forgot how I said it in my point.
Yeah, that was the first point.
If I'm unwittingly tied to a lie, I will undoubtedly be triggered by the truth.
Yeah.
And
that's exactly it.
That's it. I mean, think of someone who's caught in a lie, an affair, stealing, and you confront them with the truth of that. How do they respond? Oh, you got me. No, they're usually like, wait a minute. Wait, hold on, you. There's usually a type of reaction that isn't very humble most of the time. But the difference is when we're talking about spiritual truth, the truth that we're talking about is not something that can be quantified through like logical analysis or scientific experimentation and replication. The truth that we're preaching about, we're teaching about, is this truth that has to be experienced. It has to be experienced and not just explained. And that's what I said. I said, I'm done as a pastor trying to convict people with my words and slamming the pulpit.
No, it doesn't work.
I want to convince you with my life. Like what you see me doing on Sundays and preaching about, I am tooth and nail trying to live every freaking day of my life.
Yeah.
And that's why I share stories. It makes my wife uncomfortable many, many times when I talk about my children or I talk about her, you know. And again, I'm never going to shed any like negative light. I'm not going to, say crazy things that are inappropriate. But I'm going to share my life with you people so that you can see, man, I'm on this journey toward a deeper truth, a more meaningful truth as well.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that. And I appreciate that about Larry too.
Yeah.
This is not a place where that leaders lord themselves over the community.
No.
It is not a place where a person's identity is, where that insists on somebody's identity being, dictated by the organization or by the leadership.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, the class that we do afterwards that takes a little deeper dive into this material, many times that comes up, how much they appreciate the freedom here to ask questions, to talk about what's on their mind, to express their trigger,
I like that.
So it was a very good conversation around this topic in many different ways, because it's not just religious stuff that triggers us, but it's one of the big ones.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
It is.
Yeah, and I guess maybe it would be helpful for people to know that look, it's natural to be triggered when your worldview is being challenged, something you grew up with, something that's very dear to you. Totally normal. But the question to answer for yourself is, do I want to be a person who pursues truth?
Yeah.
The uncovering of truth, aletheia,
yeah.
like you pointed out, or am I going to stay bound by the notion that what is comfortable for me is something that I have to defend.
Yeah.
Even at the expense of truth. You don't really, when you really sit with yourself and you think about that, it should be a no-brainer answer, right?
That's right. Oh,
I want to be a person of truth.
I've seen it a million times. Having a couple of letters after my name gives me at least like the appearance of some sort of credentials, right? So it's opened some doors for me to.
No, I think legitimately it gives you credentials.
And I appreciate that, man. But like I sit and I have beers with people who are 100 times smarter than I ever could be.
Yeah.
And you sit down, and after the second or third beer, all of their apparent knowledge of certainty becomes less rigid.
Yes.
They're like, I don't know, man. Even the most religious person, even if they're open to have a glass of wine, they're like, I don't know, man. You made some pretty valid points. And I'm like, good. It's just something for you to think about, because I do believe the scripture when it says that truth is what leads us to freedom. More and more truth means more and more freedom. And people can misunderstand freedom as being like too nonchalant, lackadaisical. I've been accused of that. You just don't care about anything. No, I do. I just don't care about it as much as you do. So don't be mad at me for not having the same experience as you, because I won't judge you for not having the same experience as me.
Yeah.
And that's what you see in church world, dude. Like that, we have the most amazing band that I've ever been a part of in 25 years of doing ministry. And it's just amazing. To this day, it's still an interesting phenomenon. I'm on the front, you're on the front row, dude. Our hands are lifted. Tears are rolling down our face, dude. And I am picturing in my mind just images of just God moving and touching people's life. My children, I think of often, like protect them, thinking of my family, and just like praying as I'm worshiping, just praying to God, like, speak through me today. Having this moment, like this, literally this encounter, and just a couple of rows back, same environment, same experience, same song, same spirit. And I'm not judging the person behind me who isn't moved in the same, but I'm not gonna say, bro, you're missing it, you're missing out. I'm not gonna make that judgment. I'm gonna say, God is speaking to them in a particular way, touching them in a particular way.
Yeah, and who am I to judge that?
That's it. And I mean, for me, all responses are interesting, from the most passionate response to the most indifferent response. All of those should interest us as people who are on the way, because you can't talk about truth unless you're talking about being on the way to truth. You never arrive at it.
Absolutely.
You are always on the way towards it, and the closer you get to that unapproachable, unnameable, unknowable thing that is capital T truth, the more freedom you have, the less people's opinion about you makes difference. It doesn't mean you're not held accountable for your stupidity. It just simply means I'm more open to accountability in that realm, saying, man, maybe I am being too lackadaisical on this. Maybe I need to give more time and attention.
So well said, man.
That's what truth does. Truth frees you. Now, you can't come and say, oh, well, you need to preach this from the Bible. Well, once I'm convinced of that as something that leads me closer to truth, I'm not going to preach it as truth. I'm going to preach it as something, does that get me closer to truth? And this is why, dude, again, not to bring it up, but this is why I've thrown away the concept of hell, because it doesn't bring me any closer to the truth of what God is. It actually removes me from that proximity and only gives me a particular kind of fundamental perspective, as opposed to the divine proximity that I'm seeking in life, man. So but I'm digressing, man. The series, like, this week coming up, it's the resurrection of Lazarus. And how could that event trigger anyone toward any sort of negativity? Like, here's a guy who was loved by his community, loved by his family, well respected, and he dies. People die. And Jesus brings him back. And those gatekeepers, those self-appointed gatekeepers of truth, want to kill him again. Why? And so that you have to show up Sunday to figure out why. But that's where we're going, man. And I think for me, I'm very proud of this series, and you and I have obviously collaborated on a lot of the details and the information that comes out. And I'm so appreciative of your mind, bro, because a lot of these things that we do, are behind the scenes, and they happen in just ongoing conversations. And that's the beauty of working here, man, is that you never know what you're going to go home with going, dang, that was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Sunday was awesome. And
thanks, man.
So kudos. And thanks for talking about it.
You got it, man. Appreciate it.